to share your Thanks, Ryan, and raise questions. So what we'll ask you to do is raise your virtual hand, which you can do by, so if you hover your cursor over the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, you will see a number of different reactions. And so we'll ask you to use that raise hand before raising your question. And I promise to call on you and keep a good track of the queue. As you're hearing from your neighbors, you can use, you're welcome to use, or as we're going through the design options, you're welcome to use reactions to show agreement or appreciation or any kind of response to what you've seen. And you're welcome to use the chat as well, again, to share your questions or comments. And we will ask you to mute your microphone unless you are speaking. And again, to please share speaking time evenly and so that we can hear from everyone tonight, and to just wait your turn, and we ask for your openness to other perspectives that may be different from your own this evening. All right, and okay, sliding forward. So we did touch on this, but a couple of other notes for consideration is to, again, yes, please respect other participants' opinions, to also respect the privacy of other participants on this call. So especially if anyone has chosen to remain off camera and choose to keep their name confidential, you may recognize a voice, but we ask you to please keep that private and keep the opinions that you hear tonight private as well. We do ask for, we'd really like to have a constructive and respectful conversation this evening. So we will, if we do engage in any disrespectful behavior, we may have to ask that participant to leave. But I do believe in our ability to engage respectfully this evening and to avoid that circumstance. We'd like to, ask you to all to gauge sort of the conversation that's happening. In some cases, you might need to step back to share a speaking opportunity and to hear from others. And sometimes we might find ourselves in a quiet space where you might need to step up to share a comment to get the conversation started. So we'll ask you to consider when that right, what the right step might be once we get that discussion started. All right. Now moving forward, our agenda for this evening, we will kick off with some introductions very shortly. We want you to meet the project team, and we're really eager to meet you and understand who is here with us this evening. And after we do so, what we'd like to do is make sure that we cover a brief recap of the previous stages that have led up to these draft designs. So there have been a couple of really important touch points between the project team and yourselves and your neighbors and other stakeholders within the neighborhood. And so we just want to make sure that we're covering what has happened to lead us here today and what we've heard from you as well. Another important, a real foundational element that has been guiding the designs that we're about to cover today is the draft vision and guiding principles that we created together through the first phase of engagement on this project. So that has been, again, a guiding force of these designs. So we'll cover those, and then we'll get into the meat of the conversation, which is the designs, followed by some question and discussion. So what we will ask is, as we're going through the review of the designs, to please hold your questions until we get to that Q&A portion of the evening, and then we will wrap up. All right. So before we get into the engagement recap, let's start with some introductions. So I'm going to just go in order of the names I see in the order of the boxes that I see. And so we'll start with Catherine, sorry.
No worries. Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Egham. I'm a project manager and a program manager with the City of Edmonton, specifically managing the Hairsine Neighbourhood Renewal project.
Okay, and conveniently to Catherine's right in my Zoom boxes, my Zoom squares, is Yanish.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yanish Deshpande. I'm principal with Green Space Alliance and project manager for this project, working with the city and my background is in urban design and urban planning.
Next, we have Ariel.
Good evening. My name is Ariel Couture. I'm with the design side of the Building Great Neighborhoods branch, and I'm looking after the design on the city side.
Okay, and next we have Deb. Oh, just me.
Hi, sorry, I was trying to unmute it. I'm a resident of Hairsine. I've lived here for 44 years and yeah, interested in what's going on.
Welcome, Deb. Thanks for joining. And next we have Ty.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ty. I'm with WSP. We are the engineering and design support on the consultant side.
And there was just a bit of a shuffle on my screen here. And now we have Amanda.
Hi, my name is Amanda, and I'm also with the City of Edmonton, just here to support the project team tonight.
And Ellen?
Hi, my name is Ellen, and I've lived in the area since 1981. I just want to get information on what is going on and have some input into it.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. All right. And next we have Jean.
Hi, my name's Jean. I'm a resident of Hairsine, and like the last lady said, I just kind of want to know what's going on and have an input.
Great, you've come to the right place. And next we have Haunted Hairsine. Okay, no mic or camera, no problem. All right, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share in the chat. And if you're open to sharing your connection to the neighborhood, we'd, yeah, and how long you may have lived in the neighborhood, we'd be happy to hear it and what you're most interested in hearing about today. All right, Michael.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Borland. I'm an urban planner and designer with Green Space Alliance, the consulting team working with the city for this project.
Okay, and then we'll go to Ray and then France. Hi, Ray.
My name is Ray Georgesma. I am a 39-year resident of the very northeast corner of Hairsine, near Victoria Trail and 144 Avenue.
Excellent. So many longtime residents. And France.
Hello, I am just a simple resident, and I'm just curious of what's going on. I want to get more details.
Great. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Ron and Julie.
Yeah, we're just residents in the area. My wife's lived here for probably going on 20 years. So just seeing what's happening in the area.
Excellent. All right. And last, Mark, please.
Yeah, hi. I'm just supporting the project team with Hairsine, and I've been with the team since October and loving to see what's happening.
Okay, great. All right, sliding forward, we're going to pass it off to Catherine to give us a bit of a public engagement recap.
Awesome. Thanks, Christina. So just wanted to give a brief summary of kind of where we started and where we are now. So started the project back in December of 2021 with community conversations. And then as we connected from December through March 2022, this included things like surveys, intercept events, and this really helped the city create the vision and guiding principles that we'd shared with you previously. Then we explored options and trade-offs in fall of 2022, where we asked you as the community to help us refine some of the proposed design options for Hairsine. So sharing what you liked best about the options and also ways to improve them. And so that brings us today on the roadmap. So on that, I'll draw your attention to the image on the right-hand side, and you'll see sort of a little red icon on that second row. And so where we are is we heard from businesses, residents, organizations, and developed a draft design so that we've shared with you today and previously. And we're asking for help to refine these designs further. So whether there's ways that we can adapt or adjust our approaches to it. Is there anything that we missed? So just to also reiterate, the best way to capture your thoughts and so we can incorporate them into the final design is filling out that survey online. That's open till, I believe, May 15th. And then, yeah, the final piece I just wanted to bring attention to is just bottom left corner image. And this really is at the heart of neighborhood renewal and shows how our designs come to be. So it's your feedback as the community, along with city policies and governing documents, as well as the technical designs from our planners and our engineers that help to inform the design and create the neighborhood renewal projects. And I'll hand it back to Christina.
Great, thanks. All right, now before we go any further, we'd just like to understand if everyone, so we're going to start with a poll. We'd just like to understand if everyone here has had the opportunity to review the draft designs for Hairsine before this meeting. It's completely okay if you haven't. I'm just curious to know how much you know and how much you've reviewed so far. So you should see 2 questions popping up in front of you. And we'll just ask you to use your cursor to click your answer. Okay. So, and then I'll just ask you, Rhiann, to share the results.
Mine isn't working. I can't submit the answer.
Okay, you're welcome to.
But it's yes to both of them.
Oh, excellent. Great. Okay, it looks like, yeah, many of you have had the chance to review the design, so that's great. So, you know, we'll be calling on any specific questions that have been raised or that were piqued for you when you went through those designs, and some of you haven't. So, or have only received or have only reviewed a portion of those designs. That's great. We're here to share and listen, so that's excellent. Okay, and now we've practiced your polling. So moving forward, before we get into those designs, again, we just want to make sure that we're reminding you all of the vision and the guiding principles that have been a key driver in informing these designs. So the vision that we co-created together is that Hairsine in the future is a generationally and culturally diverse community that is safe, family-friendly, and welcoming for all residents and visitors. There are lots of green spaces, amenities, parks, and trees, offering many opportunities to enjoy Hairsine's beautiful surroundings. We are proud to have safe and accessible connections to and from other neighborhoods, nearby businesses, and amenities for people of all ages and abilities. The many children who live and learn in Hairsine feel safe when walking, driving, and rolling to and from school. We're continuously looking for ways to celebrate our diversity and foster positive relationships between neighbors and stakeholders. So that is the vision that we hope to fulfill as a result of neighborhood renewal. Now, the guiding principles that we co-created together are that Hairsine is a family and kid-friendly neighborhood with safe spaces, parks, and amenities to enjoy. That Hairsine has beautiful green open spaces with picnic tables and benches for friends, family, and neighbors to gather and build relationships with one another. Hairsine has upgraded sidewalks, roadways, and wide pathways throughout the neighborhood that provide safe and accessible connections for people of all ages and abilities. Hairsine has well-lit spaces, crosswalks, and streets. And that finally, Hairsine honors and celebrates the cultural diversity of all residents and visitors. So when faced with important design decisions, what the project team has been asking themselves throughout this process is, do these design ideas or options align with these guiding principles. So we're going to also be asking, so these are really important, and we've included them in the chat because many of the questions that we raise to you will be, we're really interested in understanding your opinion and your perspective of whether or not the designs we're about to go through align and reflect the vision and guiding principles that we created together. Okay. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to Janusz, who's going to take us through an overview of our draft designs.
Thank you, Christina. And please go to the next slide. So in order to explain various urban design interventions in Hairsine neighborhood, there could be 3 high-level design themes. The first one is biking, driving, and traffic safety. The second one is walking, rolling, and public transit. And the last one is open spaces. So myself and Ty from WSP, we will be explaining all those design interventions which are also available online. So next slide, please. So when it comes to biking, driving, and traffic safety, at a high level, the first 3 of them, they really talk about the redesign of 36th Street corridor, which is at the western edge of your neighborhood. The second one is redesign of 139th Avenue, which is one of the important east-west collector roadways, and then providing like new boulevards along the internal loop road, which is 142nd Avenue, 30th Street, and 138th Avenue. And last but not the least, enhanced new crosswalks at a number of locations within the neighborhood. The next slide, please. When it comes to walking, rolling, and public transit, in terms of like improving walkability, we are proposing wider sidewalks along some of the primary walking routes within your neighborhood, along collector roadways and park spaces, widening sidewalks along all local roads wherever feasible, providing missing sidewalk links where sidewalks are not there right now, including existing cul-de-sac streets. And lastly, enhanced breezeways. Those are the public utility lots that are there within Hairsine. There are 5 of them. The next slide, please. And lastly, when it comes to open spaces, improvements to Hairsine Park, which is the central amenity within this neighborhood, providing additional sitting areas within the park spaces and other locations, and a corner store area, which is at the southwest corner of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So first, I'm going to talk about design options related to biking, driving, and traffic safety. Next slide, please. Our first design intervention is redesign of 36th Street corridor. And we are undertaking multiple interventions here. The first one is a provision of shared pathway along the east side of the corridor. The second one is providing wider sidewalks along the west side of like 36th Street. The third intervention is replacing existing parking on the east side with, at some locations, providing boulevard design with new trees, and at strategic locations such as next to Hairsine Park and adjacent to existing multi-family developments, providing parking bays for people to park. In general, there will be 2 lanes of traffic. In addition to that, there will be intersection improvements at the intersection of 36th Street and 139th Avenue, and intersection improvement at the intersection of 137th Avenue and 36th Street. So we will talk about those design interventions as we move forward in the upcoming slides. So next slide, please. So these are basically just the zoomed in versions of the same corridor that I just talked about. One element I would like to highlight is mid-block between 144th Avenue and 139th Avenue, right next to Hairsine Park. There is an existing crosswalk, so we will be improving that crosswalk by providing a central median and a 2-stage crossing at that location. that would significantly improve in terms of traffic calming and providing improved walkability in the east-west direction, especially connecting the neighborhood to Clearview Rec Center located on the west side of the neighborhood. So next slide, please. These are some of the three-dimensional visuals to explain that. The intersection of 139th Avenue and 36th Street, we are proposing a roundabout. Ty will be talking about that design in detail. Here you can see on your right-hand side, top right side, the design for intersection at 36th Street and 137th Avenue, where you can see redesigned traffic islands, again, to improve east-west pedestrian movements. There is also shared pathway on the east side with new trees. In general, the image on the bottom explains the typical cross-section for 36th Street. As I talked before, there would be 2 lanes of travel lanes, and then parking on each side where we are providing parking bays, and then additional trees on the east side with shared pathway adjacent to the linear green space. Next slide, please. In association with the 36th Street corridor, we also have a ATCO pipeline right-of-way, which is a unique feature for this neighborhood. We are proposing additional shrubs and naturalized plantings at various locations to improve the overall aesthetics of this corridor. And there would be some additional trees also in the boulevard space that we are creating. So we strongly feel that this would significantly improve the aesthetic aspect of this neighborhood. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to pass it on to Ty, who is going to talk about the roundabout design.
Thanks, Yanish. And thanks everyone for coming this evening. It's a great opportunity to be together and to look at these slides again. Just as a reminder, depending on the devices you're on, these images may seem decently sized or small. Please do go to the website. You can find the design packages there as well with all of these descriptions. But we're happy to talk about them with you this evening. If you have any questions later on in the presentation. So as Yanish mentioned, here at 139th Avenue and 36th Street is a pretty big change in the neighborhood. The existing condition is a 4-way stop on a very wide road. At different times of day when it's busy, you can see as many as 8 vehicles, some in the parking lane, some in the drive lane, stopped at this 4-way stop, trying to navigate through, making it move a lot of vehicles, but can be somewhat confusing to navigate. So as we looked at this and opportunities for improvement, what we've shown is a traffic circle. The traffic circles do function better than a 4-way stop when it comes to moving vehicles, but they do have a lot of other amazing safety benefits. Some of those things to highlight are just that there are fewer interaction or crossing points where you're crossing vehicle to vehicle movements, especially left turn crossings, overlapping movements, or right turns and pedestrian movements. Traffic circles simplify a lot of that and take it from approximately 32 interaction points to 8. So it is a significant reduction in those conflict points, which do lead to a safer way to travel through. It also reduces the amount of asphalt in this area, as there's just 2 approach lanes. This creates some savings and efficiencies, but also more importantly, makes those crossing distance a lot shorter. For people with reduced mobility, it's a long ways to get across the existing concrete and asphalt that is there. And so we've seen great improvements in that aspect as well with this design. It also works well to connect the shared pathways here, because we have one on 139th Avenue and one on 36th Street, and help them to interact with each other and move for people biking, walking, and rolling up there. And it makes it easier for people driving to see those that are crossing because they're brought out beyond those parking lanes and closer to the crossing points. So there's a lot of wonderful improvements that traffic circles bring while also maintaining better traffic flows than a four-way stop, but also having reduced speeds because the turning aspect of it typically slows people down. As we look at this next slide, you can see a few more of those rendered images that give an idea of the potential that this traffic circle what it could potentially look like with the enhanced crossing. So these red areas just to make the crosswalk stand out a little bit more and be visible, potentially some planting areas as well throughout, and beautification of that median in the middle. So with that, we'll move on to the redesign of 139th Avenue. So this first slide gives a few great points. It just highlights where it is in the neighborhood, shows the whole corridor, and this top cross section gives an idea of the feel of the neighborhood, of this corridor, of this stretch of road. Some of the things I want to highlight on this side before we look at the zoomed in versions is just on the north side of 139th Avenue is where you see the new shared pathway. So that shared pathway is a space for people walking, biking, rolling. It gets wider in front of the schools where it's busier and more congested and more doors swinging during pickup and drop off. And on the south side, you'll see that there's less parking than there was before, but we have maintained parking bays along here at key locations that will continue to provide some on-street parking on the south side. The south side will also have a slightly wider sidewalk to help make it easier for people to walk side by side or to pass someone when you're walking down the sidewalk. The current widths are quite limited in that perspective. So on these two zoom ins, the top image is the one more to the west that ties into 36th Street. You can see various parking bays. At the intersections, you'll see curb extensions that shorten the crossing distance and exist where no parking was already, where there was already parking bans due to bus stops or intersection proximity. These curb extensions also help to slow traffic as it eliminates the extra width that used to exist in a parking lane that wasn't being used because there were no parking areas. As you continue, you can see a few more parking bays, the accesses into the school parking lots and drop-offs and a bus stop. One of the important improvements here in this curve in the middle of 139th Avenue in the Hairsine neighborhood, we're proposing a new raised crosswalk that'll help to slow people down in the middle here too, where there's the furthest distances from the two intersections, but also provide a safe way to cross into the park, into the schools without having to cross at unmarked locations over the road. It's also at the point most in the middle of the curve where it has the highest visibility on either side of it. As you continue, there are a few more curb extensions. That's benefits that we just discussed of shorter crossing distances and existing where no parking was allowed, making it more visible to people and helping to slow traffic, as well as some more parking bays. As you approach Victoria Trail and 36th Street, the road has a little bit of a bend to make sure that the center lines continue to line up through that intersection as well. This image shows some more renderings of those things we were talking about, looking down 139th Avenue into the neighborhood from the traffic circle and that raised crosswalk. We are exploring opportunities to make that shared pathway on the north side have some vibrancy, so potentially some colored bands such as the one shown here in the concrete could help give it a sense of place and aesthetic. With that, I'll turn it back to Yanish.
Thank you, Ty. And I think next slide, please. So Ty, if you can just move your mouse to applicable locations as I'm talking, that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
So the next intervention that we're talking about is the internal local loop road, which is 142nd Avenue, 30th Street, and 138th Avenue. What we had heard through earlier stages of public engagement is there is some level of speeding that is happening at this internal loop road, and when we worked with EPCOR, there were like some low-lying areas that are also identified along this stretch. So to address those concerns, the cross-section that was developed that is shown at the bottom of this page, typically we're talking about 2 lanes of traffic. Parking will be maintained on the west side or the northwest side of the cross-section. And on the east side, we're proposing to remove the existing parking and replace it with boulevards with new trees and some opportunities for absorbent landscaping. And throughout this cross-section at applicable locations, we're also proposing some additional curb extensions. So next slide, please. So first, I'm going to focus on the north section of this loop. As you can see, on the east side, there's the boulevard design with new trees, as Ty is explaining. And then at the intersection of 142nd Avenue, there will be some curb extensions and a new crosswalk. So curb extensions will definitely reduce the crossing distances for people who walk, and new crosswalks can provide better visibility for people who are walking or biking. So next slide, please. This page provides an overview about the interventions that are happening on the south side of this internal loop road. Very similar concept. On the south side of the pavement, we are proposing new boulevard with some new trees and wider sidewalks to meet City of Edmonton's complete street design standards. There are no new curb extensions proposed except at the southwest corner, yeah, right there. And then there is also a new island being proposed to reduce crossing distances when people are walking at that location. Next slide, please. This particular slide talks about all the enhanced or new crosswalks that we are proposing in this neighborhood. The first one is really staged crosswalk along 36th Street, just west of Hairsine Park. This is an important location because it provides an important east-west pedestrian connection throughout the neighborhood. And providing that island or median right in the center also helps the overall traffic calming along this corridor. Next slide, please. Maybe just go back one more slide. I'll just explain the remaining intervention. So you can see B, C, and D, they are kind of like new or enhanced crosswalks along 139th Avenue, and E, F, and G along the north portion of the internal loop road. The next slide, please. So this particular slide talks about B and C. Oh, one slide up.
Just going to offer a friendly time check-in to Yanis, just noting that we're 10 after 6.
Okay. No problem, yeah. Okay, so basically at those locations, as Ty explained, we're talking about raised crosswalks, and Ty already talked about the benefits of those raised crosswalks. So moving ahead. At location D, there is a zebra crosswalk, which is right next to the school, which is a typical intervention that we undertake next to school sites. There are also curb extensions. And then just north of that location is another raised crosswalk near the parent drop-off area. Next slide, please. And last but not the least, at locations F and G, we are proposing like new crosswalks. Again, they improve the overall visibility for people who are walking and rolling. So next slide, please. So that really concludes our overview of all the interventions for biking and sorry, what was the focus area here? Oh, yeah, walking, rolling, and biking. Yeah. So over to you, Christina.
Okay, well, let's raise the poll, and then we do have a couple of questions to address about this focus area, and then we'll move on. So we'll pop up that polling question. Okay, so we'd like to ask again, remembering the draft vision and guiding principles, to what extent do you believe that the draft design that we've just walked through for biking, driving, and traffic safety reflect the vision and guiding principles for Hairsine? And a reminder that those are also posted in the chat. Okay. And then we'll just ask to share the results. Okay. So we're seeing the large majority of participants feeling that you might somewhat disagree that that these designs align with the vision and guiding principles. We see some strongly agreeing participants and some strong disagreement. So we'd really like to understand the why behind your responses. So maybe starting with the largest number of respondents who somewhat disagree. Would anyone be open to sharing just by raising your hand, and then we'll address the comments and questions in the chat. What element of the design makes you somewhat disagree?
Or if you don't feel comfortable, you can also put your response in the chat as well.
Yeah. All right, I see your hand raised, Deb, and then I also saw Ellen's hand. So we'll go to Deb and then to Ellen.
Hi, sorry. I was just asking my uncle what he didn't like about it. And he does not like the sidewalks in the cul-de-sacs and thinks it's a waste of money. I'm wondering now about the corner store. Is that going to be on the hook for the taxpayers as well? The improvement to where the corner store is?
So maybe I can answer that question, and Catherine can also assist me. But Corner Store is a separate like program that the City of Edmonton has. So that's based on the city approved policy, and that is funded through a separate stream. And the way that works is the property owners are eligible for a city grant for improvements that actually help the property in terms of its aesthetics, but also the overall like neighborhood vibrancy. So those improvements are eligible for that grant program. In addition to that, there is also a facade improvement grant that the city offers for the corner stores that are eligible. And that is a matching grant. So 50% is invested by the property owner and 50% grant by the city. And so these programs are in place in the city of Edmonton for multiple previous years. So this particular site is eligible for that grant. So the city is working with the property owner to improve the site within for that property.
So the property owner then is responsible for that and will be charged their taxes if they choose to improve that area. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay. The traffic circle, I think, is a really bad idea. I think that that's really going to bottleneck 139th Avenue. And I think that coming from the rec center, coming from Walmart is just when you bring it down to one lane, it's really gonna cause, I think, more problems than there already is. I think I'd rather see lights there, if anything. Also, I live on the Loop Road, and I am very concerned about the lack of parking that's going to be happening on my side of the street. But something else that I was thinking about today is the lack of sunshine that I'm going to have. My backyard is facing north and my front yard is south. And I have a lovely amount of sunshine coming into my home through that. But if you start putting great big huge trees, it's going to be, I'm not going to have any more sunshine. And I'm not going to have any parking. So I'm sort of not, I'm sort of on the, I'm not sure whether I like that idea or I don't like that idea. I think I just have concerns with regards to it.
Really appreciate you sharing, Deb.
Okay, yeah. And then also too, I'm really unhappy about the shared cost of the sidewalks. I'm kind of like, I'm still gonna write to my MP and ask him why, like where's my tax dollar going to? Because I've lived in this neighborhood for 44 years. I think that I've paid enough taxes that 44 years later, I should be able to have new sidewalks without having to increase the cost again to me. And my taxes seem to go up every year. Oh, gee, I think last year they didn't, right? But now they've gone up even more. Everybody is struggling these days with utilities, groceries, everything else. And yet, boom, here we go. We desperately need sidewalks, but yet we have to pay for them. So I'm not happy about that either.
Thank you for sharing, and we hear you, and also appreciate that you're taking advantage of other channels and to share that perspective through MP. So thank you for that and for sharing with others. Okay, so I do want to go to Ellen, who you had your hand up earlier, Ellen, and then we can hear from Jean, but we also, with very limited time together, also want to make sure that we have some time to review the walking, rolling, and public transit focus area. So at just after 6:20, we'll move to that design. Ellen.
My biggest concern is the traffic circle. I do not agree with it at all, like 0%. The traffic circle is extremely confusing for 90% of people. 90% of people know how to use lights, which would be beneficial for the students crossing the road. There's like 30, 40 kids crossing the road at once. If you have a traffic circle there, nobody's moving at all. Traffic moving from Walmart, from the schools, from the rec center, from everywhere is going to be extremely bad with the traffic circle. The tall grasses in the median on 36th Street is going to block the view of pedestrians seeing cars and the cars seeing the pedestrians. And is there going to be lighting at the sidewalks and seating areas that are planned to put in across the field? Because in the designs, I don't see any lighting there. And school drop-off areas, is there going to be enough? Because there's, according to the designs, it didn't look like there was. And on 144th Avenue, where they have they just put up a new crossing light, and in some of the maps, it looked like the crossing light was going to be on the other side of the street from where it is now. So that's something that I think is like, what are they doing?
Okay, let's thank you for sharing quite a few observations though. So hearing specifically about the roundabout, some concerns about flow, confusion, about use of the traffic circle or the roundabout. And then I heard a couple of questions there. So I heard a concern about sightlines and a question about lighting at the school drop-off area. So let's give the team an opportunity to address those comments and that question.
Yeah, so maybe I can answer some of these questions. In terms of the overall lighting, there will be a separate lighting design, but we are proposing wherever there are pathways within the city park, city-owned park spaces, there would be pedestrian-oriented lighting, but right next to the school drop-off area and 36th Street corridor, There will be like the street lights, which is part of neighborhood renewal. And the spacing of those would be based on the recommendations from the lighting consultant for this project. So lighting will be addressed at those locations. What was the next point that I should talk about? Maybe just remind me and then I can explain that.
Sorry, the lighting at the school drop-off area?
Yes, so that will be addressed through street lights that are happening on the street itself. There is no additional pedestrian-oriented lighting anticipated at this point.
Okay, great. So let's hear from, so I'm seeing lots of hands and such limited time. So, and I also just want to acknowledge
right there
in the chat that there's just been some agreement with some of the comments that have been shared so far. So agreement that that others find the roundabout would as a cause for concern because of confusion or potential cause for confusion, and also some agreement with Deb's comments. So let's go to Jean, and then we will move on. But I want to remind everyone that if you have a comment or a question, you can put it in the chat, and anything that we don't have time to address today, we can circle back with you all following this session. So please, let's use the chat as best we can. Okay, Jean.
I want to talk about, I think the roundabout, like they said, is a bad idea. Like they said, most people don't know how to use them. That area is congested as it is. The loop streets with putting in the boulevards and taking away the parking and whatnot on 139 Ave. Anyone who drives in this area would never design something like that. This area is so congested as it is. The winter with the snow banks and the limited driving as it is, taking it down to the narrowness that you're planning to is going to cause havoc in the area of getting anywhere. Especially on 139 Ave. And I don't understand what the reasoning is behind putting the walkways in the cul-de-sacs. What the purpose is. Like, if you can come on the street and come down into the cul-de-sac and access any house you need to access. There's no reason to walk into a cul-de-sac unless you're planning to go into a house that's there, and you have access through their driveways to access those homes. So the reasoning behind, one, the cost of doing it, two, taking away part of my land to do it, just seems pointless. I don't understand what the reasoning behind it is. Thank you.
So one of the objectives from the city side of things is providing accessibility to each private property, and wherever there are no sidewalks, I think by providing sidewalks, we provide that continuous network of connectivity for each household. And the thing is, like right now, like maybe that is not needed, but when that house is sold, in the future, the new house owner might need, like that sort of like amenity to make sure that they can walk from their house to surrounding pathway network or other destinations. So that's the thought process. And it is based on, again, the city's complete street standards that require sidewalks on both sides of the street. So that's just some of the rationale that we could provide to address that topic.
Thanks, Yanish. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do
understand your concerns here.
Yes. So what I am recognizing that we have 5 minutes left. So I'm wondering, Yanish, can you very quickly give us a very quick overview of the next focus area? So walking, rolling, and public transit, and then we'll be able to, I think, address one more question before we wrap up.
Yeah. So Ty is going to talk about that, and then there is also like open spaces. So I think if we have like some agreement, we might need some additional time, but yeah, just to go through all the topics, I guess. Ty, would you like to just quickly explain this?
Absolutely. So everything you're seeing on this first slide, though, are things that we've already touched on, right? This is talking about the wider sidewalks on the south side of 139th Avenue and the west side of 36th Street, as well as the shared pathways on the east side of 36th Street and north side of 139th Avenue. All of these are built to create connectivity through the neighborhood and to your outlying neighborhoods. On point number 2, those are the wider sidewalks that would exist near those new boulevards, where we're also moving the excess water that's ponding on the road into those spaces where it can be handled more efficiently. Let's see if I can get that slide to advance. There we go. Now, as many of you have noted, there are some new sidewalks proposed within many of the existing cul-de-sacs. There's also an opportunity to explore adding walking and biking infrastructure along 137th Avenue and Victoria Trail, where there's currently no existing infrastructure or sidewalks on the outside edge of your neighborhood. So those are some things that will also be considered. What you see here in the darker blue color are those new sidewalks where it doesn't currently exist. The intent is to build behind the existing curb. You can see this green hatched area is all the city-owned road right-of-way, where there are utility easements and also excess width to maintain and to reconstruct roads in the future. So all of the work being done on these sidewalks is within city-owned right-of-way of the road. It would mean a reduction in grass and partial removals of driveways and walk connections, but it would exist behind the current curb and gutter that you have. Some of the other enhancements are to these breezeways. Breezeways are those shortcut routes between two existing properties. You can see an example of them here. Typically, they are existing throughout Hairsine. We'd be looking to widen those to make them easier connections for people who are biking, walking, or rolling, and to walk in pairs or groups, or to roll side by side. Christina, are we running this poll considering time?
No, let's move right into open spaces, and okay. We'll move into discussion. And what I'm going to ask, if as Ty is wrapping up, if everyone showing a thumbs up, if you could, what we'd ask, or we'd like to invite you all to remain with us for an additional 30 minutes, so we can make sure that we're hearing from everyone as best we can, yeah, just have the opportunity to discuss these designs a little bit further. I'm seeing a couple. Thank you. All right, carry on, Ty.
Okay. Yanish, it's your turn.
Perfect. So now I'm just going to provide a quick overview about the improvements that we are proposing for Hairsine Park. So this is one of the interventions that when we talk with people, we have heard a lot of positivity already, but in the big picture, there is this strong east-west corridor to the west side of the neighborhood, that pathway system that connects to the Clairview Rec Center. So we are proposing to extend that through Hairsine Park, crossing 36th Street, going south, right next to existing soccer fields, and then right next to John D. Bracco School, and then connecting the St. Bonaventure School, connecting to Community League building, and just strengthening that east-west connection to the park space. We are also proposing 2 north-south connections, connecting from first on the east side of the housing complex, and then the next one, that one, and then the next one at the center of the park, connecting John D. Bracco School all the way up to the breezeway, as Ty is explaining. And then the third one at the northeast corner on the city property from 30th Street to the existing breezeway. We are also proposing another east-west connection at the north edge of the Hairsine Park, right next to existing townhomes, improving that connectivity. So in addition to all these pathway connections, they will be designed in such a way that they will be wider sidewalks, approximately 3 meter wide, which are considered as shared pathways and provide opportunities for people who walk and bike. In addition to that, at various key locations, such as where multiple pathways kind of like intersect with each other, we are also proposing seating areas. So some sitting areas are bigger sitting areas and some are standard with 2 benches. So in the upcoming slides, I'll be explaining what those are. So next slide, please. This is one of the renderings that explains one of the bigger sitting areas that's located in Hairsine Park, just east of 36th Street, with some landscaping that provides a true community focal point at this location. So next slide, please. And this is how it looks like. So there will be shared pathway going through the center. It's a circular space which may be used for community gatherings. In addition to that, there are like shrubs all around, naturalized planting, new benches and new trees. And if we can design this in an interesting way, there can be some color and animation during springtime and fall season and so forth. This is something we have received a lot of like support when I personally talked with people. So next slide, please. In addition to that, if you look into the key map, the locations B, C, and D, those are the 3 additional locations where there would be additional seating. At location D, it is basically located right next to the community lead. So because it's a already existing sitting area with 4 benches and additional landscaping, and at the location of B and C, those are slightly smaller sitting areas with 2 benches, a concrete pad, and additional shrubs and new trees. The next slide, please. And those are the final 2 sitting areas. Area E would be very similar, and in a way, by providing like similar design aesthetics for all these sitting areas, it might create a sense of place and identity for the neighborhood, for people who live there, here, and also people visiting this neighborhood. In addition to that, the last sitting area is at location F, which is right next to the EPCOR facility. Again, providing those 2 benches. So for people who are walking along that route, it can provide a bit of a pause for those and those additional amenities. In addition to that, next to all sitting area, there would be additional amenities such as garbage bins and so forth. And wherever, because this Hairsine Park, part of it is owned by City of Edmonton and part of it is within the school jurisdictions. So wherever it is owned by City of Edmonton, in those locations, we will be providing pedestrian-oriented lighting. Next slide, please. And last but not the least, this is the corner site, a corner store site. And as I explained before, this is a separate corner store improvement program run by City of Edmonton. So property owners could undertake those improvements based on the city grant. But when we implement this program as part of our neighborhood renewal program, we make sure that the investments are happening also for the greater benefit of the neighborhood. So as you can see, one of the key interventions here is some additional landscaping along the edges of this property to improve the aesthetic value of this key commercial node. In addition to that, on the northwest corner, there would be a realignment. We'll be removing one axis into this property and aligning that axis to work better for the transportation like concerns. But in addition to that, we're also proposing a plaza space at the northwest corner, which may help, even attract additional restaurant space at that location, and for people to gather and use that facility, I guess. In addition to that, there will be some additional landscaping on the berm which is there on the north side of this property. And the shared pathway concept continues along 137th Avenue and 36th Street, providing the overall connectivity to this key neighborhood destination. So with that is really, I think it's end of all the design interventions that we are proposing for this neighborhood. I'm going to pass it over to Christina for maybe some additional questions and hear some additional comments from your side. So thank you.
Sure. Well, I would like to launch the poll. So what, I'd like you to consider to what extent do the designs overall, do you agree, align with the vision and guiding principles? So if you could please participate. So that would be for the two, or the designs that we've just walked through. So that includes walking, rolling, and public transit and open spaces. Okay. Now, we'll just take a quick peek at the results, just as a bit of a check-in, and then let's move into our discussion. Okay, so very similar to what we saw last time. That the majority of you somewhat disagree that there's alignment here. So let's get to the why, what makes you somewhat disagree. And then we see some strong agreement across the board. So I really want to thank everyone for so patiently waiting with your hands raised. So we are going to move to some of those raised hands. Though who was next in the queue for me was Ron and Julie. I'd like to call on you if you'd still like to share your comment or question, and then we'll move to Ray.
Yeah, my comment is I agree with the traffic circle would not work, especially during school drop-off and school pickup, because that's just a heck of an intersection to try and get through for about an hour and a half each time. So traffic lights would be better there. They can be sequenced to be flashing red later on. The island on 36th Street's a great idea because that'll slow traffic down. Raised crosswalks will slow traffic down on 139th and any other street. The issue is 139th Ave during school drop-off and pickup, especially in the wintertime, basically becomes a one-lane road when you're trying to get students picked up, students dropped off. A school bus or a city bus has an issue trying to get through there during those times. It is just horrible. And for those of us that live in the condo complexes across from the schools are even worse off because parents come in and park on private property to pick up their kids. And when you tell them they have to move, they're going, well, I'm just picking up my kid. And I says, I don't care. If you stay here, you're going to get a ticket from bylaw. And people parking right up against the entrances and exits. So taking away parking on 139th Ave is not going to help the situation by narrowing that road down. Because you've got school buses and you've got city buses and you've got people parking on there on top of the parents. The rest of the plan, I agree with. It looks good. It looks nice. I don't have a cul-de-sac that I'm not losing any sidewalk on, but I understand them. So my issue is basically 139th Ave, and we have complained to our council person over that issue, especially in the wintertime.
Okay. Thank you. So hearing that, today 139 Avenue is a challenge. So seeing the designs for tomorrow is cause for concern that those challenges will be amplified by this design. So Janusz, I see you unmuted. Would you like to respond to that concern?
I think really like what we're trying to do is find a balance. What we are doing for a parking situation on the south side is right next to existing multi-family developments where there is a need for additional parking. We are providing those parking bays to accommodate that need. And but to achieve the shared pathway on the north side and make sure that we are providing parking on the north side because both schools are located on the north side, and the bus drop off and the parents drop off. We really were trying to address multiple objectives, and the current design tries to provide parking right next to the locations where it is really needed. So, Ty, would you like to add anything to what I said?
Yeah, there's certainly no question that there's an overall reduction in parking. The majority of the places where we are seeing these hard infrastructure changes, though, are near intersections, are near bus stops, are near crossings. As you noted, Ron, that's an issue. When parents are parking too close to driveways, they're parking too close to accesses, or even in them, it makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to get in and out. So some of these changes are meant to actually reduce that, because it puts a physical barrier close to that intersection or that access to a parking lot, meaning they physically can't park there. The road itself is being built at a width that's more than comfortable for two buses to pass each other still in the driving lanes. And in the parking lanes near the schools, we're ensuring that the widths there are adequate for the buses to be fully out of the driving lane and not reducing the drive lanes. We do recognize that there are competing objectives and opportunities along the stretch to accommodate the shared pathway and opportunities for people who are walking and rolling and biking to all have the ability to move through this area in an equitable way. But we have heard those concerns, we are aware of them, and we are working around them to mitigate the amount of impact that the design will have. As to the traffic circle, we have reviewed the actual existing number of vehicles that are passing through it, and traffic circles, at least a one-lane one, are much easier to navigate than a two-lane traffic circle, which is what we're used to in the city of Edmonton. We haven't built a lot of smaller scale traffic circles, which are a lot more intuitive, these one-lane ones. But a one-lane traffic circle can handle nearly double the amount of traffic that we see. In fact, it can handle enough vehicles in 1 hour to handle almost a full day's worth of vehicles that we're seeing on 36th Street and on 139th Avenue. So we're very aware of that. And when we chose the traffic circle, it's because it would function better than a four-way stop and provide a lot of those safety enhancements that you do not get with a traffic light or a four-way stop. So with and that may not be your experience or perception, but these are the statistics and the numbers and the analysis that we do to take the best approach we can within these neighborhoods.
Great. Thanks, Ty. And also just want to, I just want to acknowledge some of the comments that Danielle's been offering in response to your explanation and thinking. So I think what we've heard from a couple of participants this evening is that there's concern about the cause for the confusion. The need is awareness and education. And so, so Danielle has agreed with your comments around a one-lane traffic circle, providing a more user-friendly, intuitive experience, and also suggesting that pamphlets can be mailed to everyone that explain how to use a traffic circle. So a solution there for education and awareness. Thank you, Danielle. All right, and before we move on from Ron and Julie, I just want to make sure, jumping back to 139th Avenue, did we fully cover, there was a comment or question earlier just around snow removal and snow pileup on 139th Avenue. Did we address that as well?
No, that wasn't addressed. And like I said, it gets worse because they plow the road, put the snow up, and then of course, once again, the parents picking up their kids. And this now becomes down to like the barrier that Ty was talking about. Mm-hmm. The parents are still going to park on the road, regardless whether there's a sign that says no parking or not. And when there's snow piled up there, basically, like I said, it becomes a one-lane road that a city bus cannot navigate, because parents are just, I'm just picking up my kids. They'll be sitting there for 10, 15 minutes. waiting to pick up their kid. So yeah, and again, we've talked to our council person about the snow removal there. It is a bus route, so it's supposed to be cleared faster than most other streets, but this, for some reason, 139th Ave is not. And you're already putting barriers up, and the parents picking the kids up completely ignore no stopping signs and the barriers. So I think that's going to be an issue.
And Ron, to your point, absolutely, in the current condition of that road, it has a parking lane on both sides of it the whole way. So just saying no parking when there's a comfortable space, even if there are other things that say no, it's bound to be ignored. But in this case where they're having to stop in the driving lane, I'm not going to say that there won't be some individuals that do. But it is going to be extraordinarily more uncomfortable and far less likely and far less often. I shouldn't use likely, but less often that it will occur when they're not having a space right beside the curb to do it. But that's not going to say it won't happen with some individuals who may choose to completely ignore that. As to the snow clearing, that is something that we're continually working with the snow and ice policy people to see improvements. It is a challenge in neighborhoods that have a monolithic sidewalks, meaning the curbside or sidewalks right along the curb. There's no space to push the snow into like a treed boulevard like you'd see on other roads, or on 36th Street where that's that tree boulevard that they could push it into. So there are challenges here with snow clearing. One thing with the shared pathway is the pathway will be cleared and windrows moved off of it. So there might be a little bit better clearing that you'll see here with that. But it is certainly a struggle that we continue to hear around the city and work to find solutions.
Thanks, Ty. All right, Ray, you've been waiting so patiently. Thank you. Would you like to raise your question or share your comments?
First of all, I met with the group at Hairsine Park on Saturday, and I got the distinct impression that whatever we say then or now, and I'm certainly getting that impression from what Ty is saying, that it doesn't really matter what we say about the traffic circle or about 139. It's a done deal and we're going to get it anyway. So I'm not sure my comments are going to hold much weight. However, I strongly agree with what people have been saying about the traffic circle. It is a bad idea. Right now with the 2 lanes, there's an awful lot of traffic that is eastbound turning north onto 36th Street. Now, I have been there where there's a line of 10, 11 cars waiting to turn left on 36. I need to go straight east on 139. And because there's 2 lanes, I can go almost right up to the 4-way stop and then stop my truck and I can proceed through the intersection without having to wait for all the left turning traffic. So the traffic circle is a bad idea. Raised crosswalks on 139th Avenue is fine. I don't see the need for them within the residential neighborhood. It just seems like a waste of money. And along with that, the boulevards along 30th Street and the sidewalks and the cul-de-sacs. I don't know why, with the budget situation the city is in, that you are proposing to spend more money than you actually need to spend. And I agree with what I believe it was Deb said earlier. Quit giving city council more reasons to raise our taxes. It's not necessary. It's also, with those sidewalks, it's going to create problems for us with snow storage. There's about 8 feet between my driveway and my neighbor's driveway. We both have to throw our snow there. And so now what? If we throw it on that sidewalk, we're going to get ticketed because we haven't cleared it. My neighbor has about 13 inches of frontage between his driveway and the other neighbor's driveway. Somebody said, well, it may increase mobility. It may be for mobility purposes when you get older. Well, here's a news flash. Most of Hairsine is already older. There ain't that many kids. Most of us are seniors, as myself, I'm 68. Their grandparents or their great-grandparents. And if I'm going to walk out of my house with a walker or wheelchair, I'm just going to toddle down my driveway onto the street and pick up the sidewalk wherever I have to. Those sidewalks are not necessary. It's a waste of money. The walkways in Hairsine Park are great. However, it seems to me you've ignored the natural walkways that the students are already using to get to and from school. They're not that hard to see. You just have to look where the worn grass is. Just because you put a walkway somewhere doesn't mean the students are necessarily going to use it. And back to 139 Avenue. What you are proposing, Ty, is going to put a cork in a stopper there. What the people have said about people parking anywhere, they don't give a rat's patoot where they park. They have totally been blocking the bus stops to the point where the bus has had to position itself right across 30th Street. So I can't get out of 30th Street. The ETS buses are not the only ones having to use that road. What about the school buses? What about the buses coming from the after-school care centers, picking up kids? I'm sure, Ty, that you don't live in Hairsine. I think you need to start listening a bit more to those of us who've lived there and those of us who've lived there for an awful long time. Some of your ideas are absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you for sharing, Ray. I'd like to give the project team an opportunity to respond to some of the concerns that you've raised. Would you like to begin, Ty?
Sure. I mean, you're right, Ray. I don't live in Hairsine. I live in Rideau Park, which is the exact same layout and design as Hairsine. We have monolithic sidewalks. I have schools right nearby me. I pay my taxes on my home just the same as the rest of you. At the same time, I'm not going to stand here and say that there aren't some things that are going to be different and create some change in the neighborhood. I'm also not saying that we aren't still exploring these further. And part of the whole goal of bringing this to the public right now is to get continuous feedback and to see if there are places where continual refinement can be made. As it comes to the parking and blocking bus stops, I certainly do. Everything we've done is things that we've already implemented in other neighborhoods in the city. And we've seen that it actually does have a wonderful impact when we bring those bus stops out and make them align with the travel lanes instead of being a parking area. People don't park there anymore. This is not something new that we're trialing out in Hairsine. It is something we've done throughout the city through neighborhood renewal. It's been going on for at least 30 years. Now, I've only been doing it for the last 8 or 9, but my boss was there when the city started doing this 30 years ago and been training me on it. There certainly are things that are going to make lives a little bit different. The cul-de-sac sidewalks is certainly something that is newer, though. That is based on city policies that do require sidewalks to exist in these areas. That's not my idea. That's not something that the team is coming in here and forcing so much as the city and its policies and programs are requiring. And alignment with that is part of the funding models. So that is something you're certainly welcome to bring up with your city councilor and see if they can influence those policies a little bit more. There is a lot of that goes into all of these designs as we go forward. And it is a question of who is in council. They do dictate how a lot of those policies are written and implemented and funded around the city. We do our best to work with the varying priorities, and as we hear from the public, we always look for opportunities to adjust and refine, because you're right, Ray, I do not live in this neighborhood, and we do truly value your experiences and your perspectives so that we can make things the best we can, but also something that will serve this neighborhood for a very long time. We're looking into a future with mobility changes that are going to be drastic. As we look at electrification, micro-mobility, meaning smaller transportation modes, all of these things are going to change how we move and think and as things drive themselves in the future. So we have to be prepared for that as well, and not only plan for the roads and the uses that we see today, but the ones that we will see tomorrow, because this improvement to Hairsine neighborhood, as I believe it was Barbara saying, been here for 44 years, sidewalks badly need it. Well, this is going to be another 30 to 50 years before the next renewal comes in. So we need to build now for a future that is coming to us quickly, and making something that's accessible and equitable for everyone of their different experiences and the ways that they move now and the ways that they will move in the future.
Yeah. And I'll just try to answer some of the other concerns that you had raised, Ray. One thing that I heard about the location of pathways in the Hairsine Park, and where the trails are, the way students are using. We have carefully reviewed those locations. There is one goat trail, as we call it, located on the north side, which truly goes like east-west through the park. That is the only one that we have not exactly aligned with our proposal, because it goes through multiple sports fields. But the intention is like people want to like walk east-west through Hairsine Park. So after considering all those existing sports fields and where the land ownership between the school board and City of Edmonton, we have carefully laid the alignment for the east-west pathway. Same thing with the north-south pathway that happens on the city property. So when it comes to the alignment of the pathways, we have done our best to make sure that it addresses general patterns of people's movement through the park space. I heard I basically read some comments about the pathway that's on the northeast corner going east-west next to those townhomes. That pathway happens right next to the private pathways. So that is something, like as the designs move forward, depending upon the site conditions and our sidewalks, we can definitely review that one more time as we move forward to the next phases of the design. And then when it comes to the boulevards that are being proposed along the internal loop road, there are a couple of things happening. More importantly, as I talked about before, when we work with EPCOR, those loop roads, they include like two or three locations which are low-lying areas, and there are challenges from like water perspective. So this is an opportunity to improve the overall stormwater management, as Ty was explaining, and that really gives rise to that opportunity of providing some additional like boulevard spaces right next to that internal loop road. And then in addition to that, we are providing crosswalks. And again, we are not providing too many raised crosswalks along the internal loop road. The only location is on the east side, just north of 139th Avenue, east side of the school, just north of 139th Avenue, where there is an existing parent drop-off and school bus drop-off area. So at that location, to improve the east-west connectivity for students, we are proposing a raised crosswalk, and also provides that traffic calming as you are entering that loop road. So that's just two quick kind of answers about your concerns for those questions. One last thing I read as part of some of the comments here in the chat. I think
just noting that we're now at 7 o'clock, so we're now 30 minutes over our scheduled time. So I don't think we'll be able to address any further comments and questions in this space. But what we are, so first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their time and for agreeing to stay with us for an additional 30 minutes. We have been diligently capturing all of the questions that have been raised in the chat, and so we transferred those over to a worksheet. So the project team is going to be working together to compile the responses to those questions, and then we will be following up by email to share our responses to these questions. What I'd also like to let everyone know is that we will be back in the community on May 1st from 3:30 to 5 p.m. At the Hairsine Community League. So if you will be inside this time, for those who came to visit us while we were outside, we'll also be walking around the neighborhood. So if there's any question that you really wanted to chat through that you didn't have the opportunity to this evening, you're welcome to join us then. And you are always welcome to reach out to the project team with any questions or concerns. And so what we'll do, so Catherine is always, well, she's always listening. So we're going to put her email into the chat as well. So if there's any direct follow-up that you'd like to do, that's also an opportunity. All right. So with that, I will have to, Catherine's email will be included in the follow-up email response with all of those questions and answers. All right. So with that, I'd like to again thank everyone. I wish you all a wonderful evening and a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just an extra second. All right. I think Catherine is going to, hoping Catherine will come back and join us. I'll send her a quick message. Okay. Oh, there she is. All right. Well, I think we can stop recording now, Rhian.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay.